2023 top manga recommendations for comic book fans and readers. This is something that I really do enjoy. I love helping comic book fans and readers get more involved into reading and seeing what else is out there outside of just pure Western comic books, because there's so much, so many great stories in the manga world, right? And so we had Chris Abbott, one of the viewers on Facebook, reach out, and he's like, hey, what are some recommendations that you guys might be willing to share with me? And I said, well, I think I have a video somewhere. I want to say I did one a year or two ago, top 5, but guys, I have read so much more comic book, so much more manga. So I feel like my perspective maybe has changed a little bit, but I wanted to do another one for him specifically. So if he's the only one that watches it, that's great, but I really feel like there's a lot of value here. And this is for anybody who already is familiar with manga, comic book fans who maybe toe in the water a little bit. You're interested, not sure where to start, kind of like when you first start collecting comic books or reading comic books, not sure where to start. Here you go. This is the video for you guys. And we're going to start it off with a lot of things that you might feel related to, if that makes sense, or you can connect with. These aren't going to be Japanese specific stories. These are going to be a lot of really interesting characters like Batman who have had manga stories done about them. So we're going to kick it off with Bat Manga Volume 1, Bat Manga Volume 2, and Volume 3. Now, these were mangas done in the 1960s when the Batman show was happening, and these are absolutely hilarious, really campy, kind of funny stories around your favorite characters, Batman and Robin. There's some new villains in there. The way the story is being told is really interesting, but overall, I enjoyed the heck out of it. So if you're interested in, dipping your toes in the water a little bit, this is a great spot, right? I mean, Batman. You just have to get used to right to left and the black and white artwork and maybe the different sense of humor, but it's translated really, really well. But I highly recommend, if you're going to give it a shot, starting with something like this if you're really unsure, because there's nothing weird in it, nothing crazy. It's just a Batman story told, through a mangaka, which is a comic book writer or artist's viewpoint. So super cool. Been around since the 60s. So what is that? We're going on 50 years now. 60 years now. Highly recommend. Deadpool Samurai is the next one I'm going to recommend. There's only 2 volumes. This one right here is quite funny. I actually read a lot of people where they weren't really interested in it, thought it was dumb. I quite frankly enjoyed it. You get all of the fun humor of Deadpool in the story whilst being introduced to some popular, current manga characters. You also have some OGs showing up in the book, so you get this really interesting take on Deadpool going to Japan, and it's funny, and you get a new spider character, lot of action, right? But again, it's that right to left, black and white, all of that good stuff, right? So it helps you get used to it while familiar characters. And this did very well in Japan, but highly recommend. So if you're going to start off and you're unsure, start off with Bat Manga or Deadpool Samurai. I will tell you, these 2 are much easier to get a hold of than Bat Manga. These aren't comic book characters I'm about to go into. These are characters that you guys might have grown up and loved. Pokemon. Everybody knows Pokemon, whether it was the cards, the video games like me, or the TV show. 99.9% of people really, really love Pokemon. And this is another great way to get into manga. 1 through 7 in this first box set. It comes with a little poster. So that's kind of cool about some of the manga box sets. You get some extras. Nothing crazy, but it's neat. And what I will tell you is this is the only manga I've been able to convince Dustin to even consider trying, and he loved it. Absolutely loved it. So there's kind of a look at some of the artwork there. It is pretty interesting. The Pokemon beat the crap out of each other in this book. It is not like what you might see on the TV show or maybe in the video game. Like, they're really getting beat up, and some of the people are getting beat up. But it's pretty neat because this isn't a specific word-for-word retelling of any one specific story that's already been told. So it's super neat because you have Red. He's the main character, and then as you go through the adventures, it progresses. This is just the first box set. I've read it. It's great. There are several more if you're into like that next-gen Pokemon, but this really stays close to that original, 151, 152 Pokemon, whatever it is. So highly recommend this one as well as that easy entry point into manga. This one for me is by far one of my most loved things, like top 3 loved things in pop culture, comic books, whatever. And it's Dragon Ball. I absolutely love Dragon Ball. Now, I have the box sets back here of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. You can't see them because it's behind the DC box, but then Dragon Ball Super is coming out right now. But I highly encourage you guys to pick up any one of these if you were a fan of Dragon Ball like I was from the TV show. I didn't even know growing up anything about a manga or the fact that it was based on a manga. I just loved the show, and I know so many people also love the show. Boom, manga. Now, the box sets, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super, and Dragon Ball are all a little bit different from the TV show in the sense that sometimes they're a little more graphic, the humor's a little worse, sometimes it's a little bit more adult. So it didn't really have a lot of the edits that we got in the US versions of the TV show, so to speak. So there's some of that manga weirdness in it, that Japanese humor, I guess we'll call it. But it's still a fantastic story, and if you're familiar with characters, you're gonna love it. And I will tell you, out of all of the Dragon Ball Z, or Super has been my favorite read. So I highly encourage it. Pick it up. This is really going to be the last relevant thing to comic books. Then I'm going to get into some real, like, true blue. Now, these are all manga recommendations, but some stuff that, has no relevance to superheroes or anything like that. Like, it gets really deep into the manga lore, or not lore, but really deep into the manga world, I guess we'll say. But this one, My Hero Academia, a lot of people know a lot about this. It's really interesting starting off. The main character, Deku, is a little bit weird. Absolutely massive fan of All Might. My sister got me to watch the show first, and then I started reading the manga. Now I have the box set and all of that. I'm completely caught up on everything that I'm showing you. I've either read all of it or I'm completely caught up, but highly recommend this because it's all about superpowers, superheroes in training. It's about the young guy, just all he wants to do in the world is be the best possible version of himself, and that's where I think a lot of manga do a lot of great jobs at doing it. Now, there is some of the Japanese humor stuff in here. It's not too bad, but it is just kind of interesting and funny. But, you have to be interested in that kind of humor. Artwork is phenomenal, absolutely wonderful. I'm trying to find a really cool shot of the book. Now that right there, phenomenal artwork. I love this. I will tell you, the beginning of the manga is not nearly as good as where it's at now. The story in this has progressed so well. And again, at the beginning, the main character is kind of whiny. It's a little different at first, but I will tell you, hold on, keep trying, because it gets so good. And a good rule of thumb is try 3 volumes before you give up on anything. 3 volumes. Now, I lied a little bit whenever I said a second ago that I'm either completely caught up or read everything available. There are 2 things in this pile that I have not, and that's for good reasons. But this first one, Attack on Titan. Now, everybody I think has kind of heard of this, or a lot of people have. It's done really well in the anime world, but it's much better manga in my opinion. I didn't care so much for the TV show, but the manga read so well. Now, you don't have to get it in this colossal edition, which is like an omnibus form. You can get them in normal size mangas, and that's just great. They even have box sets. I love these, and the artwork is phenomenal. This one is basically, it's kind of weird. It's a political type storytelling, not like current US politics, but it's based on politics in the area. It's feels kind of post-apocalyptic, even though it's kind of not. It's kind of, but it's weird. But at the core of it, you have these titans who are literally massive giants, and there's this singular world surrounded by 3 different walls, a middle wall, mid wall, outer wall, and it kind of starts off with a big bang, we'll say, and it continues down that storyline, and the storyline of where the Titans come from, who they are, about the current area they're living in, and really world-building experience here is great. But it does get a little gruesome, right? So, like, here's just a quick shot of one of the Titans, or a few of the Titans. So it's kind of weird and very interesting. But again, I want to say I read this entire run right whenever they were wrapping up the manga. I started reading it, and I read all of the volumes in like 2 weeks, something like that. It was really good, guys. It was really interesting. It's unlike any story I've ever read, even in comic books. There's nothing been like it. So highly recommend this if you're looking for something completely different than anything else that I've ever read in comic books. Really highly recommend. To go alongside something like that, completely outside of anything, Berserk. I think everybody knows about Berserk. Everybody and their moms talk about Berserk. I have not finished Berserk. The reason why I'm not is, one, I'm waiting for all of them to come out, which I think the last and final one I think is 13 coming out later. But I've had a slow roll reading these because they are very dark. They're very gruesome, and it's not in like a weird dark way, but it's very, I mean, it's just a dark book. It's not really a horror story, but they're like, it's wild. It really is wild. But the artwork in here is literally the best manga artwork I've ever personally read. The creator passed away late last year, or early last year, or something like that. Maybe it was 2 years ago, but he passed away recently. But it is just a wild read. Now, this is adults only, 100% adults only book, but it's a dark read. I won't lie, and it kind of puts you in a weird mood. So that's why like I slowly read it. It's not something that like I could sit and read, and some people may. I personally can't sit. I couldn't sit and read all 13 volumes in 2 weeks. It would just put me down in the dumps. And but it is a great story, unlike anything else. Very adult. There's none of that weird Japanese humor, but there certainly is a different tone to it than anything else. On this table in comic books, it's wild, but highly, highly recommend. It's not a lighthearted read, that's for sure. I love this one, Vinland Saga. It's an incredible Viking story. It just has heart, it's passion. It's just like this big adventure story with a lot of fighting, a lot of violence in it sometimes. But it just has a great story, right? And you don't have to worry about any type of weird humor or anything like that. But I will tell you, if it's, you've ever been interested in the world of the Vikings, or if you're just looking for a great adventure story, this right here is without a doubt one of the better ones you could pick up. I'm a huge fan of it, and they have these really nice hardcovers they're coming out with, a little bit at a time. I don't know exactly how many volumes they're on at this point, but highly recommend. And it honestly would be a pretty good entry point if something like Vikings or anything like that ever interests you. Super, super easy read, by the way. You can knock out a volume or two within a short amount of time, and sometimes that's just what you want. You just want a mindless read with great artwork, a good story, and not feel like, like you have to think too much about it. Berserk, sometimes I feel like you have to think a little bit too much. Some of these other ones, you're like, oh, kind of caught up. Just a great, overall, wonderful read. Next up, this one's all thanks to Alan Breedlove, Fist of the North Star. And this is literally just a post-apocalyptic type story. This one has been around for quite some time, so the artwork is a little bit different, but it is still really, really good. And if I tell you too much about it, it'll kind of ruin it, in my opinion, so I highly encourage you to just check it out. But we'll read the synopsis just because that's always publicly available. Humanity has risen from the ashes of an all-out nuclear war to a nightmare of endless suffering. So that's kind of the first sentence of that. Amazing artwork. He highly recommended it. There's like 7 of these hardcovers out now. I have the first 5, so I've only read up to that. But what I will tell you is just beautiful artwork, different, great story. Really, honestly, a great story. And if you really like martial arts and that kind of deal, this right here will certainly be one you guys will thoroughly enjoy. Now, this next one, my sister again got me into it. We were at the first Huntsville Pop Culture Expo we had ever been to. Chris Sabat was there. My sister and I, we stood in line for like 9,000 hours to meet Chris Sabat because I wanted one of the Vegeta Funko Pops I have back here. I think I got like one of the last 5 he had. We literally waited in line for like 3.5 hours. And then went and got Sean Schimble to sign my Dragon Ball Z #1. Absolutely was so pumped about that. But she was like, oh, he voices Captain Yami out of Black Clover. And I'm like, I have no clue what that is. She's like, you really should watch it. And so I watched a little bit of it, and I found out it was a manga after I started reading it. I'm like, oh, cool. So I started reading it, and this one is about wizards and demons and magic, but not in like a weird, dark way. This is much more lighthearted, very funny, but again, another one of those things where it's the young guy or guys, multiple guys at this point, just young people wanting to be the absolute best version of themselves through trial, tribulation, training, working hard. Again, a lot of great things that manga does kind of put in there in terms of their messaging. Yeah, super great artwork. The story has gotten so great where it's at now, where we're currently caught up at. So many twists and turns, and every time an arc is over, it elevates a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. So I highly recommend it. I would say this is one of my top 3 manga I've ever read. Out of everything on this list, everything on the shelf back there, everything I've read digitally, definitely top 3. Story is so good. Artwork is so good. There's only been really one arc where I'm like, this is kind of slow. Love it. But no relevance to comic books, no hero connections, no superheroes, no none of that. Pure manga. And I highly recommend it. Easy read too. Another referral from Alan Breedlove, Eden Zero #1. He bought me the first volume. I read it. This thing is just a funny, goofy, cosmic space story. Great story, great writing. Artwork is phenomenal. Does have a lot of that quirky Japanese humor, we'll say. So if that's something that kind of has always thrown you off about manga, don't recommend it. But if you're kind of okay with that, some of the quirkiness, some of the weird Japanese goofiness there, it is pretty good. But again, the storyline progresses very well, and the artwork is great. And I am almost all the way caught up to the release. Now, I don't have any more than Eden 01. I have them all in my cart on Right Stuff Anime. But yeah, there's like 21, 22 volumes out right now. And you do the math, it's a lot of money to drop, but I'm going to start buying them slowly as soon as they have a sale. Again, Right Stuff Anime, great place to buy these when there's a sale. Super great. But boom, highly recommend if you're into the cosmic space story, goofy, funny, and you don't mind a little bit of that weird Japanese quirkiness humor, if you will. It's good. This next one, I've had it for a year and a half now, I think. James Sovic sent I forget what exactly happened, but he sent me like 5 or 6 #1s to try out. And honestly, if it wasn't for James, I would not be reading manga like I am. So huge shout out to James. He's halfside.76 on Instagram. Amazing dude. So I really appreciate him more than anything. And I think I've mentioned that a time or two. So, but Zom 100, had this for a long time. Finally picked it up and read it a month ago. It might have been right before Christmas or right after Christmas. I couldn't stop. I immediately went, ordered every single volume that was out, put it on my pull list at the comic shop, which you can do. You can put manga on your comic pull list at your comic shops. And it has been so good. It is a zombie story, and it's just funny. It does have some weird Japanese goofiness in it that you might hear about with manga, but the storyline is absolutely fantastic. But again, super, super goofy. I mean, at one point they have a walking shark. But if you're looking for if you really enjoy the zombie theme of books or movies or whatever, and you're looking for something that's just funny, a good read, just lighthearted, has like, how do you describe a book but without giving too much away? But yeah, it's called Zom 100, The Bucket List of the Dead. And basically it's a guy, he's got 100 things he wants to do before he dies or gets eaten by zombies. It's based in Japan, and it's good. Really recommend it. Assassin's Creed. Really goofy, really funny. If you've ever looked at manga, you've probably seen some of these covers. My sister, again, highly recommended this, so I got into it, read it, all on Shonen Jump app, which I highly recommend. It's like $2 a month now, $3 a month now. Super affordable. And that's where I began my manga reading, was all on that app. Highly, highly recommended. I think they even put out like a free trial for 7 days or something like that. This is where James recommended it to me. Changed my life. Read it all, went out and bought the box set. It is hilarious. There's a ton of that weird Japanese humor, we'll say. And again, I'm not really a fan of that part of it, but everything else of it's great. And it has so much heart and soul and character development. And the ending is one of the saddest endings, I think, in all of manga I've read. Of course, it's one of the few that I'm reading currently that are completely done with, I want to say. Well, not really, but you know what I mean. So, boom. Good one. Check it out. It's goofy. It's weird. Super great story. Now, I know a lot of people are going to expect this one, Chainsaw Man. My honest opinion, wasn't that good. I really just don't get the hype behind it. Did not enjoy it. I still bought all the volumes. They're still on my pull list as they come out. Just wasn't that great. Sorry, guys. But this one, top 3, easily one of my favorite. Science-based, literally about as post-apocalyptic horror as you could think, but done in a way that it's never been done ever in any medium. There's no mass bombings, or it's not about climate change or anything like that. It's done in a way that is unlike anything else. And if you've ever kind of had an interest in science at all, this one right here is right up your alley. Dr. Stone And the tagline here is, imagine walking to a world where every last human has been mysteriously turned to stone. Ooh, I love post-apocalyptic stories. I really do. I don't care if it's a movie, comic, TV show, manga. If it's there, I genuinely do enjoy these. But this is done in a way that I've never seen it done before. And it has a really great anime. It's not finished, but the manga is. Oh, I love it. So many twists, turns, character development has been fantastic. I hate the fact that it's over. It really, like when I found out it was ending, really kind of hurt my soul on the inside a little bit. But highly recommend. Top 3. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the list. I hope it gave you at least somewhere to start. For me, I was never really sure where to start until James told me about the Shonen Jump app. So that's what I'm highly recommending you do. Download the app. It is a fantastic avenue to jump in, read a few things that you're interested in, some things that may be like Yu-Gi-Oh! I was a huge Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan. I started reading the manga, totally different than the TV show. While I don't have it in my collection yet, another great one to read if that's something that interests you. But for $9.99 per manga, they're about 200 pages. That's close to like an equivalent of 10 comics. And most times you can get a discount somewhere like Right Stuff Anime, even your comic shop if they have a pull list discount. Somewhere around $7 for something like this. Great value, and they look great on the shelf. And box sets are even better in my opinion. I'm a total box set fan. I love it. Now, if you do decide to read anything on the list, drop a comment, let me know, reach out to us on Instagram or anything like that. Huge shout out again to James Sovic, the only reason why I'm reading manga like I am. And it's been an absolute joy the last few years as a comic book fan to find a new medium that tells different types of stories and still look really cool on the shelf. You know what I mean? Guys, you're the best part of Two Brothers Comics. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it out. And as always, collect your way.